There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the Audience Test Preview. The recently released book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Goetz.
In 2015 and 16, OscarsSoWhite, the hashtag that changed the industry, rewrote the narrative critiquing Hollywood's racial disparity. After decades of neglect and exclusion, it was a turning point in entertainment and film. My guest today is one of the leading women behind the most significant inclusion initiatives implemented to date. Friends, I have with me trailblazer Cheryl Boone Isaacs, a veteran communications and marketing executive in the film industry who has worked on more than, get this, 300 movies, including Close Encounters of the Third Kind, My Bodyguard, Ghost, Forrest Gump, Spider-Man 2, The Artist, Precious, and The King's Speech, to name a few. She is undoubtedly best known for her 25 years of service to the Academy of Motion Picture, Arts and Sciences Board of Governors, and was the first African American to serve as its president. In 2022, she became the founding director of the Sidney Poitier New American Film School at Arizona State University. CBI. Cheryl, I am so excited to have you here today.
Oh, Kevin. I just adore you. Lovely to be here. Thank you very much. I do want to make one little point.
Yes, please.
Yes, as the first African American president of the Academy, also as the first person of color.
Wow.
In its 90-plus year history at that time.
And now, thank God, we have Janet
we
Yang.
have Janet. And I always like to say, because as you said, involved with the Academy for many, many years and in the industry. And through the years, I certainly notice the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Non-diversity, challenges for women, people of color to advance. Few here, especially behind the camera. Talent slightly different, but still leaving many very talented people, all peoples, women and people of color, kind of in the B-suite.
Yeah, on the fringe.
In the fringe, with an occasional this and occasional that. So when I was elected president, it had always been in my mind, always, in everything I've
I was just
done.
going to ask you, did you need OscarsSoWhite to shame us? Or were you going to be more proactive regardless of that? Can you be candid about that?
Yes, I'm trying to remember now, but there were very few minorities on the board during my first 24 years or so. So there are all these little spaces, I will call it, that one needs to ascend to in order to be eligible for membership. Now, there's a reason for that, because this is an organization about excellence. And while there are many people that were excellent, their road forward in their career was not enough. Therefore, there was a feeling of they don't want us.
It's a boys' club. It's a
boys'
white boys' club.
A white boys' club. Women, it didn't matter. They're scattered through. We know many women who have broken through, men as well, of color.
Your brother being,
yes,
we're going to go there in a minute because
okay.
One of our favorite subjects, Ashley Boone, but
exactly.
He was the first president of color, I believe, at a major motion picture studio at 20th Century Fox. Am I
exactly.
correct?
He was the very first executive in Hollywood to have the title of president of marketing and distribution.
And who was the first woman?
As African American?
Yeah.
Cheryl, 20 years later. Now, doesn't that tell you something?
Oh, it sure does. It tells me that there is an institutional issue in Hollywood.
Yes.
And that the Academy,
yes.
for good, bad, or otherwise,
exactly.
took the brunt of that and also the responsibility of that, which I always thought was sort of an unfair responsibility. But nonetheless, what I appreciated and applauded about my friend was saying, look, somebody's got to take responsibility. Somebody's got to take control. And you allowed it to be the Academy, which was really noble if you really think about the entrenchment of those old values and mores and traditional hires. It took, a lot of guts.
My saying was, folks, we need to widen our lens.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of talent that's being left behind. there's an audience that is not being served. This is silly. And you asked about OscarsSoWhite. I put it this way. I'm in the car. I am driving. It's a stick shift. OscarsSoWhite pushed me into fourth gear.
Mm-hmm.
And
you were in
it
first.
allowed, well, I would say second.
You were in second gear.
A second gear as we were.
But it was an
moving.
acceleration
But-
for sure.
Exactly. So it was a boost in a very helpful way to get attention
Mm-hmm.
outside of the academy. Therefore,
Yes.
putting a spotlight on something that we could really dive into.
Was there any resistance once that hit in the press? Was there any resistance from the board?
No, I do believe, again, I've been involved for a long time. It was a bit of a refreshment. People didn't know how to do, what to do, didn't really talk about it very much. However, once it was brought, it was world, certainly national news and international, because I have friends internationally who would reach out to me. Oh my goodness, had no idea that it was such a closed group. And now we're saying, no, we're open. And people that I knew and some that I did not personally know, African-American filmmakers, who did not know that in my mind, they were part of my catalyst of discussion.
Oh, interesting.
For studios in particular. Again, widen the lens. You've got talent in front of you that for whatever reason, you're not noticing. You make assumptions people can only go to a certain level. And that happens generally anyway, but it's much more noticeable.
Really what it did in many ways is it opened up our whole industry to take a look at itself in the mirror.
Exactly.
And I think that is amazing. What are the board meetings like? Everyone wants to know when you go behind those doors and there's all the governors meeting and you and I are in the same branch of the marketing and PR branch.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like? Is it convivial? Do people get along? Is there infighting? Give us a little inside scoop, but without revealing anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I was on that board for quite a long time, and it certainly did kind of change through the years. Of course, different people, but different approaches. I was pretty young when I first got on the board in 1989, scared to death, absolutely scared to death. There were 2 women, I think correctly, I really should look all this up.
It was very low. I mean, we have data that
Yes.
absolutely shows
Yes.
that voices, inclusive voices
Mm-hmm.
of, and I don't mean simply race, I don't mean color, I mean age, I mean
Oh, yes.
different culture, languages, creates a more compelling discussion, much better idea generation. This is a fact. I've done a lot of research around this, obviously, since OscarsSoWhite. And the truth of the matter is, why don't people just get it? Well, I think they are starting to get it. I really do believe the
agree.
Academy has changed and there is a genuine shift.
Yes.
And that's a fantastic thing. I want to go back to early Cheryl Boone Isaacs. I want to go back to a comment you made to me years ago, which was David Forbes. And you were a young, I guess, newbie,
Very newbie.
publicity
Yes.
director or coordinator, whatever you were.
Not even.
And tell us the story of when you were in a meeting and you kind of asked a question.
Oh, yes.
I love that so much. And the young listeners particularly
Yes.
need to hear this.
David Forbes said a few things to me that I've
David was, of course, president of distribution. This is when you were at Ray Stark.
That's right. I was at Columbia and it was one of our movies. That was the first time I actually learned about press junkets from David. And I remember asking him, I was annoyed because I felt I wasn't listened to, and he was someone I felt I could confide that sort of thing in. And he said to me, "You don't know enough to ask the right question."
Isn't that the greatest? I have used it probably 100 times, if not more. His quote regarding you, and you're in your early 20s or something like that.
Yes.
And were you offended when he
I
said
was so offended.
it?
What? Because he was a friend, so I could be all like that. And
Was
I
it in
just
front of
thought-
people, by the way?
No. Oh, no. No. And it just struck me, Oh, my God. It was a big lesson.
And you have been very known for another quote, which was for the first 10 years of your professional life, keep your head down.
Down, yeah.
Learn.
Yeah.
Absorb. Be a sponge.
Yes.
And then lift your head up and lean in.
Exactly right.
It's a marvelous piece of advice to give to young people, especially younger people now who have sort of this expectation to want to like go far too soon, if you
Tomorrow.
will. Tomorrow, exactly.
I deserve it.
Yeah, I deserve it. Well, I mean, I applaud the ambition,
Yes.
but you cannot manufacture relationship. You can't manufacture experience. It has to come organically. And I think that was also, going back to the academy, one of the issues of this, the excellence comes in many different ways.
Correct.
We had to sort of, as an academy, change our definition of what excellent meant. And that was a good learning experience for me to sort of understand, oh, okay, I understand that. That makes sense to me because we've been looking through a prism of one way of excellence. And we had to broaden it, or we would not have let any other people in because people have been, as you said, excluded for so long.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember this. When you got the presidency, I was your first call. At least you told me that.
Probably
Because I called immediately. As soon as I read it, it was a breaking news. And I called, Cheryl. And you said, I know. I just found out. Because it broke very soon, right?
Well, what happened and what happens is the elections happen just with the board, which I've always thought was a great idea. It's not membership wide, right? It's the board, because the board knows.
It's like choosing a pope.
Well, but it's like
and the smoke.
I know, almost. But I think in some ways nobody was thinking of that at the time. So when I was elected, I had been told that within the first hour, I had over 1,000 requests on LinkedIn because I was a consultant. And I went, oh, cut that out. I am not a seeker of fame, but I love this organization.
You really are not. And because of your publicity background, you've always been in the business of promoting others.
Exactly right.
And you don't really feel particularly comfortable when the spotlight's on you.
Nope.
But damn, you did a good job, I want to just say.
Well,
you did a good job of getting up there and representing us so elegantly and gracefully and beautifully. And you looked damn good. I remember you wore that. You bought it in India, I believe. That sari that you wore.
Oh, yeah. No, I bought it in Abu Dhabi, but it was of Indian design.
Was that the green one?
Yes.
And I'm looking at a red dress here in one of the pictures in the studio. You knew how to wear your new fame.
Well, my motto for myself, because so much is coming at you, I wanted to make sure I did not embarrass my family and the members of our branch. That,
we were so proud of you. We had Sid Ganis.
Yes. And Richard Kahn was a publicity.
Was Marvin ever?
Marvin was a board member.
But never a president.
No. It was the three of us.
Wow.
What a group. And these two men were my mentors.
Wait, and we have to next talk about how we're going to give an Academy Award to the marketing and PR branch. I mean, I actually think that
it's very complicated. Who gets it? The president of marketing at the studio?
I think it's honorary, probably honorary Oscars. There's a place for people who've made an indelible mark in the business.
The year I produced the Governor's Awards, one was Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And then the Humanitarian Award, of course, goes to someone. I nominated a few people, which will remain nameless, but I did nominate someone for an honorary Oscar this year and also for a humanitarian. Neither of them got it, but as you know, I was very, very instrumental in supporting Jenna Rollins getting her honorary Oscar. May she rest in peace. I miss her terribly. And it was you who called me because it was 7 years that I lobbied for Jenna to get it with people like Marty Scorsese and Sandy Bullock and others that were great in wanting to help support that. And then you called me one day and said, Kevin, are you sitting? I said, what? Jenna's getting it. It was just after you made the call to them and right before the press hit because you knew how Neil and I were really behind that. And man, that was meaningful. And of course, we sat with Jenna at the event and it was one of the most special evenings that I've ever been to. It's a wonderful room. I loved, for example, being Sharon Stone's guest one year and we sat right in the front and Oprah got the award for humanitarian.
Wasn't that fun?
And she talked about Sharon right in the front row and it was such a familial.
Wonderful.
I felt Cheryl, I felt like I was part of something important. And I think that's why it's important for us to always retain and maintain the integrity of the Academy. I think Bill Kramer's doing a spectacular job, isn't he?
Yes.
And I know the museum's had its challenges, but they seem to be getting their stuff together.
That takes
time. I know it does.
Everybody wants instant. That's almost impossible. And even in Hollywood, where they're instant stars, if you do your homework, you'll find out that they've been at it, so to speak, for many years.
I also like that they don't seem to back away from the controversy. In other words, they'll say, yeah, we screwed up, we're going to fix it. Or we're learning. This is a learning moment for us. And I think that's super important.
Well, I have a thing. I wish they would, somewhere in there, list all the precedents of the Academy through the years.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know
Is it really
why
not
it's
in there?
not there. We're not mentioned at all.
Well, we will
and
do
I know
that.
I'm not thinking just for me. I think about Mr. Mirisch. I think about Bob Ramey. I think about many different people that had some part of where the Academy is today, including the museum. The museum has been talked about almost the entire length of the existence of
That's
the Academy.
That's a really great idea, by the way. The other one that I'm advocating for are marketing posters, one sheets.
That's what I just had a meeting about, I want to do this. Celebrity photography, as well as behind the scenes of the unit photographers. Because I'm always bringing these things to my students. They have no idea of all of the different areas that they can succeed.
I hope, and I know you do this, I'm having to ask, but I'm going to say it for the listeners. If you haven't been to the Margaret Herrick Library, get your ass there because it is spectacular. When I was writing my first book, Audienceology, that was a very good source, man. Like that had old questionnaires from Funny Face. It is a treasure.
It really is a treasure.
And I'm so glad to hear that you are also actively giving your input because you're influential in that area. And if you notice, I said, we're going to change that because the thing is, it's our museum. It's the entire membership.
Exactly right.
And we all knocked ourselves silly to raise money and to give money and to continue to support it.
I just want to say that the idea for the Governor's Awards was actually mine years ago.
That was brilliant. Separating it from the noise of the whole broadcast.
What I kept noticing was wonderful people who were recognized for the broadcast. But I kept thinking, and one name, didn't even know me, was Roger Corman. There were names in my head that I'm like, wait a minute. We are saying that we represent the best in so many different fields, what it takes to make a motion picture. And while we have celebrated many fantastic folks on the show, we should put something together that is more about the people we all know from all these branches, whether it's out of costume, whether it's out of makeup, whether it's out of cinematography, whether it's humanitarian. We already had Thalberg. We already had Margaret Herrick. So why not broaden it and make it
a celebration, by the way, with no press.
Which is still my favorite because people act differently.
You know, as you know, I just got an award this year. And
I was there.
You were there.
Of course.
That's what friends are for. So that was a very special evening, obviously, for me. But if you notice, there was no press invited inside the room because it was originally telecast, the
American
Cinematheque. And I think people were more likely to want to let their hair down. And it is a different thing.
It's a different vibe. There's nothing wrong with any of it. I refer to the Oscars as our one night out versus the 365 days of work that goes on for the organization.
It's like our New Year's Eve.
And it's fun. I mean, I love still going.
It's so fun. When we come back, I want to talk to Cheryl about what got her to the place and the woman she became. We'll be back in a moment. Listeners, we are just around the corner from celebrating our 50th episode of my podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger. We have a lot in store for you, including an upcoming special interview with visionary director Ron Howard. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And for this milestone, we would love to know who's listening out there. Please visit my website at kevingetz360.com for the link. And through August, everyone who connects will be entered into a drawing for our special 50th episode celebration t-shirt giveaway. As always, I am grateful for your support of my book, Audienceology, and in helping to spread the word about my podcast. Thanks, everyone. We're back and so excited to continue our conversation. Again, one of our favorite subjects is your brother. Your brother who I never got to meet. Now, first of all, you and I go back, I don't even want to say how many, but it's over 3 decades.
Yes.
I met you at Paramount originally, I think, which was probably 35-ish years ago, when you were working with Dawn Steele and then we with Ned Tannen.
Ned Tannen.
Frank Mancuso. And then our dear Sherry Lansing.
Sherry.
Who's our favorite. Talk about your brother and his influence. You're a girl from Springfield, Massachusetts.
That's correct.
What did your parents do?
Mom, stay at home. Dad, postal worker.
So good work ethic in the family.
Totally New England to the core. Still, very much.
And how many kids?
4, and I'm the baby.
And Ashley was the?
Number 2, my sister, Vel.
I know Velma.
Yes, who's still alive. 88 and
88. Oh my
yes,
Lord.
Just the other day.
Can you believe you're saying you have a sister who's 88?
I have no understanding. She talks about how she's 39 and I'm 50. So now I'm her older sister.
And who's the fourth?
And so Richard, who I grew up with.
Is Richard still alive?
Yes, and he's 80, and I'm staying with him this weekend.
Where does he live?
In Pasadena.
Oh, he's local. Okay.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I teased my mother is that Vel and Ashley were like a year and a half apart. And she didn't plan this, but she was smarter than even she knew, I think. She realized 2 babies at once, too much. So the next pregnancy was when Ashley started school. Then she had Rick. And then when Rick started school, she had me. So I always used to joke with her. She said she didn't plan it, but I think because she's very smart.
How did Ashley get to Hollywood?
Through Robert Benjamin at United Artists in 61, 62, after graduating from Brandeis University with a degree in economics.
Brandeis University?
At the day he graduated in 1960. Yes,
a Jewish boy, a nice Jewish boy,
right? Words like Meshuggah, and when I was a little girl, he would teach me all sorts of.
Why
things.
did everyone revere Ashley so much? I never. I'm just being candid. I've never heard like a negative thing about.
You never.
About
I don't think you will. And what amazes me,
like a gentleman, is what
very
they say.
much, and handsome, charismatic, smart. Feet on the ground.
Died way too young.
55 of pancreatic cancer.
In 94, was it?
94. And it was a 6-month. And
must have been one of the most devastating things in your life.
Oh, my God. Because our family, I was so blessed to be born into that family.
Did he tell you to come out, by the way?
Oh, no. He was adamantly against me getting into the business.
Well, you went to Whittier College, which is out here. So
that's right.
How did you get to Whittier if he didn't? Did you follow him anyway? To California?
No, he came in 71. I came in 67.
You preceded him?
Just like on the board, I preceded him.
Oh.
So it's always not everything has been me second. And I used to tease him when I was elected to the board before he was. And later people would say to me, oh, you got on the board because of your brother. I went, oh, no.
He was elected to the board finally, though?
Yes. And we were both on the board together. And the Academy.
Hey, wait a minute. That's nepotism.
He was executive branch on PR. And the Academy didn't do anything publicity-wise for it. Okay, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Right? Says a lot. But he was the force in our family.
What was his superpower?
Brains and lack of arrogance, I would say, which is why I think people had such high regard for him, except for those who wished to make sure he didn't become too famous. And I do believe that, and I think that that's what caused much angst and ugly inside of his body.
Wow.
For cancer to exist.
Appreciate research?
Oh, yes. And technology. Big time.
You're talking in the 80s.
Oh, yes. He had the first computers, the first this. Oh, yes. He was, I think, out of so many areas that I see today that he would have excelled tremendously. The biggest one is technology. Because growing up, he always wanted to be an architect.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
What did you want to be?
I wanted to be a musical comedy dancer on stage.
Do you know I never knew that?
I know. I always did dancing.
With your
I always sang.
You have a self-deprecating quality. I said you put others before yourself,
always.
Yet you wanted to be on stage. Sharon Stone was my guest. I said, Sharon, you were this sort of bookworm who didn't really, like a little intellectual introvert who became an actress. Like, how did that happen? So I say the same thing. How did you make the turn away from that to the publicity side?
It's not I know I fell into that. It's not something that my parents thought was going to be the place to go for a young female. They didn't say no.
Oh, there's the
I won't say
Massachusetts.
that.
That's the New England.
Well, my parents were born, my dad in 1910, my mom 1915. Their vision as African Americans in America, very different. And it was always there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be careful all the time. Makes me more reserved. And
Very
that's for sure. And it
Sure
took
does.
up quite a bit of time. Protection, not overly, but there. And I had a few other jobs. I would say they were more like jobs. I went to Whittier College because at the time I wanted to work for the federal government. That's why my interest in politics usually.
You were a political science major,
Absolutely, and an economics minor.
How'd you fall into Hollywood?
I was living in San Francisco.
Right.
Another little interesting fact. Out of college, I was a stewardess for Pan American Airlines.
That I remember.
Right.
Wait, for Pan Am.
Pan Am.
Did you wear one of the pilled box
Oh,
hats?
yeah.
No,
Yes.
you didn't.
Yeah.
And they called you a stewardess.
That's why I always say to people I was a stewardess.
That's so
Not a
cool.
flight attendant.
How long did you do that for?
Just 2 years.
And then what happened?
And, well, there was a gas shortage. Remember that in the...
Carter?
Yes. So the choice was move to Honolulu or Houston because I was in San Francisco. I love San Francisco.
Honolulu,
So-
hands down.
I was worried that
Hello?
I would become crazy with
No
island
offense,
fever.
don't write me letters if you're
No,
from Houston.
island fever. But
Oh,
the routes were fantastic. It was Asia, and I love Asia. And then I took a couple of different jobs and thought, what am I doing? I'm in San Francisco. What am I doing? I'm 24, 25. Cheryl, you need a career. Come on. And I really toyed with this for a while, for like months. And then I went, you know what? I really want to be in the business. Packed up the plants and the cats and drove to LA. Ashley was, I'm not going to help you.
Oh, he said that.
Absolutely. We were very close. So I knew it wasn't anything about ego or power. That was never a thought
Yeah, it's a
in
thought
mind.
of if you could do anything else, do it. In other words, it's a hard business.
It's a hard
So
business.
he wanted you to figure it out on your own, I guess.
African American, female, his little sister. He
Yeah.
was concerned. And I said, that's okay. It really is okay. I want to see if I can get it on my own.
Mm.
So Bob Dingillian, who worked with Ashley at Fox and then at Lad Company, who I absolutely adored, obviously adored me, and he gave me some names to start going for interviews. And they were small PR firms that were powerful, but small, okay? And first of all, this is a funny thing. When I would call up and make appointments, I would constantly be asked, are you one of Pat's daughters? Pat Boone. And I would say,
You said,
no.
You light
I would
up
just
my
say,
life.
no, I'm not. And they would, because of Bob, I think, take the meeting. And every meeting after, I would say, could you give me some names so I could call? But it was always fun. Not really. When the door would open, and I'd just watch the face for a few minutes as we had to readjust to something different.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my freshman year in college when my roommate, when I opened the door, she burst out crying. It took her quite a while to calm it down, to really.
Oh my God. Hearing this
Oh,
shit
yes.
is just like, whoa.
Oh, yes. The book will be very exciting.
Wow.
So anyway.
No, it's something that someone like myself who presents as a white male in this society never has to deal with. And it's just
Very
crazy.
fascinating. It's
You know? I
It
mean,
is
really,
what
it's
it
just
is,
so-
you know what I
No,
mean?
but do you think things have changed?
oh God, yes. However,
Thank God.
doesn't mean that's over.
Oh, I didn't say
But
that.
it
Yeah,
is
I understand
definitely
that. I understand that.
changed. And I think allowed people to be able to actually express themselves when they might have been afraid in their group or their area. But you asked me a question I didn't quite finish, because I just want to say when I would go out on these interviews, and I could tell they were just being polite, but that's okay. That doesn't stop me, things like that. And then I went to Columbia Pictures because Bob had said to me, Dingillian, oh, you know, I heard that Columbia is going to put together the biggest press junket ever in Hollywood. Maybe there's something there. So
What was it for?
I got a meeting, Pat Boone's daughter, with Barry Laurie, who was head of publicity then at Columbia Pictures, and the movie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh my God, your first movie?
My very first movie. But I was a little nothing in the corner, believe
Who
me.
cares?
Exactly. And I told my students that because I was a nothing, nobody pays attention to you. So I'm a
Just you're
great observer.
Sponge.
And I'm like watching and
That's
who
right.
and blah, blah, blah. And I've just always been that way. And that was my first position. And I have to say that through most of my career, a lot of those journalists I worked with, who would have known that? I would never had associated that concept when I first started out. So all those years in publicity, when we would do press junkets or whatever, I'd known them already for years.
You were Paramount after that for 13 years.
Yes.
You did so many. You rose from a junior person to a VP, to a senior VP, to an executive VP before you finally became president of marketing at New Line.
That's right.
Now, in all those years, what junkets, what publicity events are you most proud of? Is there one that really sticks out in your mind? Like, we did this for Forrest Gump, or we did this for...
You know, I take these things kind of personally. So the one I think about, and it's come up lately because it's the fourth installment, is Beverly Hills Cop premiere, the second one. Eddie. There was Sylvester Stallone. Every cool folks in Hollywood all wanted to go to that premiere. And it was tense, and it was just so much fun. And I got to dance with Jerome from the time. Anyway, to me, it was a very big deal. It's like one of my highlights. We also...
Where was it?
It was on the rooftop in Hollywood. That could never happen again because of all the noise and the sound, and the people living in the hills were all, angry. But that was a lot of fun. Probably the biggest was the Howard Stern film that was at Madison Square Garden.
Private Parts?
Private Parts, yes. With,
I love that movie.
I know.
Betty Thomas
Betty
directed
Thomas,
it.
I love Betty Thomas.
Betty,
right?
the best.
It was so much fun, and she thought Blaze and I, when we had our first screening at the lot, we didn't know she was behind us, and we're watching this movie and talking back at it, and being, like real people, not all the studio people. Me and Blaze and Carol Sewell were like, yeah, go, all that we do. And at the end of it, she went up to talk about it, and she said, all I know is those people back there, I want them in every screening I ever have. It was so funny. But I remember Arthur Cohen said to me,
Arthur Cohen was head of marketing.
Head of marketing then, and my boss, and learned a lot from him, with everybody, actually. I must say, I took bits and pieces from everyone. That works out, doesn't, whatever. And we had the Pope Mobile, and it was MTV special before the screening at Madison Square Garden. Oh, my, that was big.
That's a biggie.
That was a biggie.
I remember going to the premiere at Madison Square Garden for Godzilla. And I
fun.
sat like almost center court.
Is that Size Matters?
Oh, that was Size Matters.
Right.
Bob Levin.
Bob
Call out
Levin.
to Bob.
That's right.
Call out to Bob. I'll tell you why
Yes.
you need to call out to Bob, because that movie opened spectacularly well and had, I think, the biggest drop. It made no money because it was all about opening weekend, which means it was all about marketing. And if you talk to Dean Devlin, he'll tell you one of his regrets is never really having tested that movie. And that was a fatal mistake that
You always have to test. You got to get out of the bubble.
Oh,
You must get out of the
music, guys. Cheryl's singing music. You must test. You heard her say it right
bubble.
here.
It's silly. It's very easy for us to live in our bubble.
I have some speed round I'm going to do quickly.
Okay.
And I've chosen
Whoa.
specifically African-American notables in our business. And I just want to get give me your first take on your experience with them. First is Reuben Cannon.
Oh, my God. I have loved Reuben Cannon for a very long time. And I did not know when I used to see his name on those Universal shows that he was African-American. I saw it was a cool name. Reuben Cannon? Really? On the front of a show on television? What? So, who knew? And we're still friends. In fact, we have a project together. I adore him.
What's the project?
Can't tell you.
Okay. I'll learn afterwards, folks. Deborah Martin Chase.
Another great one. I met her on Princess Diaries. And she's still also a good friend. And she's done so much. She needs more recognition, in my mind. I think she was one of the first or the first to have a studio deal. Female, African-American, I believe. Very smart. Knows her business.
Wonderful.
I think she's fabulous. She's a good friend.
Deborah Lee.
I don't know Deborah that well. We got to know each other more when I was president CEO. These women are so smart, highly educated and very smart, and learn very quickly, which one must, in order to navigate and maneuver through this very, very tough world called entertainment.
Paris Barkley.
Another one of great ones.
Yeah.
I'm loving that you're doing this. Paris was president of the DGA when I was president of the Academy. And then who got elected.
Were you
right?
overlapping?
We were at the same time.
Oh,
and
he
of
did
course.
really well.
Oh, yes.
He really was terrific.
He's fantastic.
Hema Washington.
That Screech, who just get it done guy. Get it done guy.
Wow.
And many Emmys, which he totally deserved, not big in the spotlight. Good friend, who was then made president of, not writers, producers. And so there was the three of us at one time in Hollywood. Was there a big deal about it? No.
Spike Lee.
Spike, one of my favorite things about Spike, never mind the fact that when I first saw years ago, She's Gotta Have It. Oh my God, it's probably my favorite to this day. And even though Do the Right Thing, monumental.
Summer of Sam.
So many, so diverse, so fabulous. Worked with us one of our marketing campaigns one year for the Oscars when we did what is your favorite quote from a movie? And he went out on the street. Wonderful. And one of my favorite things with Spike was when I called him to tell him that just came out of the meeting. And
that was Jenna Rollins' year.
Right. And I called him and I said, Spike, I just want you to know I came out of the board meeting and I want you to know that we have selected you to be a recipient of an honorary Oscars from the Academy. His first words were, for real? For real, Cheryl? I'll never forget that ever. For real? And I said, for real. It goes, a real one, not a little one. I totally teared up. Those were probably my favorite of my years as president is calling people like Maureen O'Hara, whose cries, Maureen O'Hara, I'm talking to her, and she's so excited. She's in tears. Do you know what I mean?
Do I know what you mean?
That was so much fun through those 4 years of calling people. It's like...
I remember Sid Ganis calling me to tell me I got in the Academy.
Oh, yes.
Because, of course, I got rejected the first time, which happens very often to folks.
Oh, takes a while.
Well, then I got in on my second try, and it was really about qualifications at that time. I had to have X number of years as I don't know, whatever you had to be.
It was.
Just a couple of more, because
okay.
This is fun. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Ava DuVernay.
Well, she's a force. And she's stunning. Don't you think? I've always thought she was stunning.
I think she's stunning. Yeah.
She's stunning. And she is powerful.
Yeah.
And what has she done with it? Help others. Okay? Nothing can be better than you have this kind of power and you rain it on other people so that they can be successful.
Someone I haven't worked with in a while, but I always thought he was so gifted is Thomas Carter.
Yes.
Have you talked to him lately?
No, I haven't talked to almost
anyone. I know.
Anyone, probably Ruben more than anybody lately. Yeah, things change. When my time was up at the Academy, I could have run again, but I just felt 24 years.
You could have?
Yeah.
I thought you termed out.
No, I did not term out. I turned out, but I didn't term out. But I just thought 24 years, people, come on. Yeah. That's crazy. New people, please.
You teach students. I want to ask you about, they come in, these students, and I've taught your class a number of times at Chapman. I have to say that they all think they're going to be the next Spike Lee or Martin Scorsese.
Or Steven Spielberg, that's what I
hear
all
Steven
the time.
Spielberg.
Yes.
And so my question, I guess, is what do you tell them about the intersection of art versus science, or the art versus the audience?
It's not versus science. Science is part of it.
Can you tell me about how they come in and how they leave?
Well, they're young, so they come in full of piss and vinegar, which is great, or shy, sometimes very shy, not knowing much because of press. It's usually the most famous, the way the press is. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. You're famous if you're an actor, you're a director. Everybody else, maybe, if you're interested in certain areas. But that's kind of the average person, the average film goer, people who enjoy and love this medium, including students, and they think about the movies they've loved, and so they look up who is a director. So the biggest thing for me through all of my years, again, I started teaching in the 90s.
I didn't realize that you went back that far. With
Yes.
Where were you teaching then?
USC Ray Stark program.
Oh, at the Stark program.
Yes, that was my first number of years with Art Murphy and then Larry Terman. Yes. Art was the one who forced me. I kept saying, what are you talking about? I can't teach graduate students.
Was he a writer?
Yeah, for Variety.
Variety
Yeah.
reporter?
And he called me, I want you to do this.
What do you tell the student leaving film school, coming into the world? I'm interested in hearing what you say to them. Other than two things, for the first 10 years, keep your head down and learn. Right. And the other one is you don't know enough to ask the right questions.
That one comes early.
I love that. But tell me about what you say as parting words to them, or what would you say as we end this interview?
What is important to me is that they understand that this business is a collaborative business. It takes a village. It takes a community.
The art of filmmaking is not
one person. And every department that comes together to actually bring what is written words onto a screen that elicits emotions for people is magic. It's magic when you think about it. How does that happen? And it happens with a whole group of people from different disciplines who are all in support of the important thing, which is the story. If the story isn't there, you know this totally.
Oh, 100%.
Then as this project progresses, if it does, and I used to say, folks, I'm from marketing. If we can't figure out what the essence is, then we're going to tell the public what it is. So you need to make it very clear. So it's a very big point at the Sidney Poitier Film School.
I say to students all the time, yes, it's a director's vision. Yes, there's a...
yes, of course.
Yes, the producer is the...
glue.
Exactly. Puts it all together. But at the end of the day, you don't have a great production designer, an art director, and star, and writer, all of those things. Right. It's not like writing a novel. It's not writing, or it's like painting an oil. The reason is you don't like those things. They can go in your closet or in your drawer.
That's right.
But to get involved in a film, it's a medium that's meant to be seen by many people, and it takes a village to do properly. Yes. So I love what you said. I love the fact that you salute so many artists, and it doesn't surprise me that your incredibly strong advocacy and sensitivity to all those things got you to be president of our academy, but also to the woman that I know you are, and the woman who is one of my very dear friends. And I love you, and I thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to see you. Always. We've known each other forever, and we will forever.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingoetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll celebrate my 50th episode with a very special guest, the Academy Award-winning filmmaker Ron Howard. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.